One morning, planes vanished from the sky. Not because of weather, not because of war, but because an entire nation stood up and said, enough. Airport terminals sat silent. Florida resorts dimmed. Rental cars in Las Vegas gathered dust. So, how did it come to this? Was it a trade war, a political slap, or something deeper? Something built over years of tension between two of the world's closest allies. Canada just boycotted all flights to the United States. And the fallout, it's far bigger than anyone expected. Because this story isn't just about travel. It's about power, money, and what happens when neighbors turn their backs. Number 6. Tariff retaliation ignites the fire. It didn't begin at the airport gates. It began with a punch to the wallet. The United States imposed a sudden 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. Washington called it strategy. Ottawa called it sabotage. So Canada hit back. In early 2025, a wave of economic retaliation began, and the first to fall, flights. But this wasn't just about metal. These tariffs sparked outrage, shattered trust, and launched a movement. Over 90% of Canadians backed reducing dependence on the US. That's not just protest, that's a cultural shift. And the first blow didn't land in Washington, it landed in the skies. What happens when your neighbor slams the gate and throws away the key? Keep watching. Number 5. Border and sky, collapsing fast. Airports didn't empty overnight. Highways didn't fall silent with one announcement. But the signs were everywhere. One flight canceled, then another. Suddenly, families headed for Florida were scrambling. Rental cars in Buffalo, just sitting. By March 2025, flight volume between Canada and the US had plummeted over 70%. But here's the part no one was ready for. This wasn't just a dip in travel. It was a rupture in the everyday lives of millions. What do you do when the vacation you've taken every year just vanishes? When your weekend shopping trips to the US become a logistical nightmare? That's exactly what happened. Quick reminder, subscribe now to keep getting sharp, researched, revealing stories like this. Trust us, what comes next will leave you questioning how secure our travel systems really are. So why did this really happen? Not safety, not fuel prices. It was anger, retaliation, and a deep national shift. After Washington's tariffs hit Canada's economy, Canada struck back with something symbolic and impactful, a boycott of American travel. And public support? It exploded. This wasn't Canadians just canceling trips. They were demanding it. A February 2025 poll revealed over 90% supported scaling back ties to the US airlines. Like Air Canada and WestJet slashed routes. Travel agencies reported a 40% drop in bookings overnight. And border crossings fell by 25% compared to the year before. That's not a blip. That's a freeze in everyday traffic. Entire industries felt the chill. Vacation planners, outlet malls, cross-border buses all hit hard. But most missed the bigger picture. The ripple effect. Tourism, real estate, and economic shock. This wasn't just about flights or shopping. It hit real estate, retail, and even employment. Snowbirds, Canadian retirees who spent winters in the US, started dumping their vacation homes. One Fort Lauderdale realtor had 35 listings from Canadian sellers and 0 new buyers. US cities like Las Vegas, Orlando, even Seattle began bracing for impact. The United States Travel Association warned, even a 10% drop in Canadian tourism could cost billions. So imagine a 70% collapse. Hotels began cutting hours, airlines trimmed schedules, tour operators in New York and California started laying off staff, and border towns like Buffalo, Detroit, and Seattle felt it firsthand. This wasn't just lost income, it was the unraveling of a dependable travel relationship, one that fueled both economies for decades. Number 4. U.S. tourism revenue plummets. Picture palm trees. Hotel pools packed. Tour buses lined up. That was before. Now, beaches sit half empty. Restaurants close early. Business owners ask, where did everyone go? The answer? Canada left. After Canada's dramatic boycott, Canadian tourists vanished, and with them, billions of dollars. In 2024, 3 million Canadians visited Florida. By spring 2025, that number crashed. One Quebec travel agency saw a 60% drop in Florida bookings. Car rentals fell. Theme parks, once recession-proof, felt the freeze. Las Vegas? Same story. Unsold hotel blocks, quiet casinos. And the math? Even a 10% decline meant $2 billion lost. Actual drop? Over 70%. Projected loss? $4 billion plus by year end. Jobs are on the line. Policymakers are starting to panic. And still, no signs of recovery. Number 3. The Canadian side feels it too. Canadian airports? Quieter than ever. Empty gates, silent kiosks. This boycott, while powerful, also hit home. Air Canada reported a 41% drop in cross-border passenger traffic. WestJet grounded several U.S. routes completely. And it's not just the big players. Small airports, Halifax, Saskatoon, are suffering. Travel agencies built around U.S. vacations? Decimated. One Montreal office saw bookings fall by 75%. Another in Vancouver had to lay off half its staff. And snowbird properties? Now, liabilities. Inquiries to sell U.S. vacation homes jumped 300% in 2 months. This isn't just economics. It's about how Canadians rethink how they travel. More domestic trips, more Europe, more Caribbean, and less America. Number 2. Diplomacy on the edge. It started with a sentence. A sharp, unexpected remark from a senior Canadian official during a televised interview. If the United States won't treat us as a partner, we will no longer act like one. Within hours, flights were grounded. Diplomats walked out. Bilateral talks collapsed. It wasn't just a misstep, it was a spark in a room already full of fuel. January 2025. The United States imposed sweeping new tariffs on Canadian technology, agriculture, and clean energy exports. In Washington, it was framed as a move to protect national interest. But in Ottawa, it felt like a deliberate blow. A breaking point after years of quiet tension. This wasn't an isolated conflict. Disputes over dairy quotas, softwood lumber, pipeline permits, and climate regulation had simmered just beneath the surface. Year after year, administration after administration. Canada had stayed patient, until now. February 2025. In an emergency parliamentary vote, Canada passed a bold and symbolic motion. All non-essential flights to the US, suspended. No business meetings, no spring getaways, no weekend cross-border travel. Just silence. And a clear message. This is no longer business as usual. Social media erupted. Hashtags like Boycott USA, Fly Canadian, and hashtag Stand with Canada trended nationwide. And the public? Over 60% supported the freeze. Especially younger Canadians, who saw this as a stand for sovereignty and self-respect. Meanwhile, in Washington, the response was immediate and aggressive. Tariff hikes, military cooperation quietly scaled back, joint environmental agreements put on hold, and whispers of a full trade review. The once seamless relationship, built on shared borders, values, and trade, was beginning to fracture, not with weapons, but with policy, principle, and growing public pressure. And that fragile bridge between two allies, starting to burn. Number 1. The Buy Canadian movement. Walk into any Canadian grocery store, shopping mall, or hardware aisle today, and you'll see it. Buy Canadian. It's no longer just a slogan, it's a movement. In the wake of the travel freeze and diplomatic fallout, something deeper took hold. A nationwide shift in mindset. Nearly 7 in 10 Canadians now say they actively avoid American-made goods when possible. From smartphones to sneakers, maple syrup to media, Canadian consumers are choosing local. Not out of anger, but out of pride. Local farms, seeing record growth. Small businesses, flooded with new support. Canadian tech startups, gaining traction like never before. Even Canadian beer, music, fashion, and film are trending upward, redefining what it means to shop, stream, and support at home. This isn't just economic, it's cultural, it's personal. It's about resilience, independence, and a country discovering what it means to stand, not beside someone else, but firmly on its own terms. So now the question becomes unavoidable. What happens when one of the strongest cross-border alliances in the world fractures? And more urgently, what if it doesn't heal? The next chapter could redefine the way we travel, trade, and trust for generations to come. Subscribe now to follow every step of this story, because this isn't over.